David, thank you so much for speaking to me about your memories of Woodford Memorial Hall. So, I think there's an awful lot to say. I think I'm just going to let you tell me the things that you remember.
Okay, let me think. I suppose the best memories are as children when we used to play in the hall or on the tennis courts that were between the house we lived in, which was called Lindell, and and the main hall. There were two tennis courts, and we would ride our bikes around the tennis courts, or in rainy weather we would go into the gym and ride around and around. But actually, probably the most memorable times was when my cousin would come and visit with us, and we would have these huge games of he in the hall. And we would, in the daytime, we could run all over the place. There was not too many people in the daytime, and that was a really a good time. Um, I think apart from that, I remember that in the earlier years there was a snooker room well, actually a billiard room. It was the old-fashioned billiard game there, and there were two full-size tables, and we often had the opportunity with a couple of friends to visit the billiard room and learn how to play snooker and things like that. And I think there were some of the times which altogether made life very, very pleasant as a child. And that really lasted up till about the age of 12, when we moved then from Lindell on the corner of Chelmsford Road into a house in Buckingham Road. And that would have been the time that our downstairs neighbour Julie would have moved away. So that was really, if you like, the kind of the end of the childhood phase. After that, the hall remained as the place where my father worked, where the Saturday night dances would take place, where we'd have groups like Unit 4+2 and two of each. And I remember the setup there, which was the dances were organised by a man called Tony. He and my father used to get together and be part of that the organisation. And room 4 would be a small cafe area, and room 3 would be the cloakroom, and the corridor between them led into the gymnasium. This is where the dances would take place. There were a couple of times when things got a bit rowdy, but they had a couple of bouncers there who were policemen, and these guys were enormous. And I do remember on occasion where one youth got rather rowdy, and the policeman took hold of him and just hung him on one of the hooks on the side of the cloak. It was a cloakroom type hook on the side of the gymnasium, and he just hung him on there. I think he stopped being a nuisance fairly quickly. But they were good times, and I had a cousin who would come and visit the dance as well. He would ride over from Dagenham on his Lambretta, and we'd go into the dances. I must admit, I was not personally pretty keen on dancing or anything like that. I do remember it being extremely loud, and if you stood anywhere near the speakers when the groups were playing, you could actually feel the vibrations. And I think you could put up with that very long. Although there were a few hundred people who actually did seem to enjoy it greatly.
You did mention to me that one of the groups had a record.
Oh yes, there was I think it was Unit 4+2, and at that time, if you wanted to get anywhere with a record, you had to get onto Jukebox Jury. And of course, they were playing that night in the gymnasium, and they didn't have anywhere to watch Jukebox Jury. So they came around to our house and sat around our living room, and we saw, I think probably was David Jacobs, I think, who introduced it. And they played the record, and it was a hit, and they were really excited.
Oh.
And I think that was probably the start of the real start of their career.
And you wanted Georgie Fame to go there as well, didn't you?
Yes, there were friends at school who were very keen on Georgie Fame, and they were trying to get me to persuade Tony to try and get him to come along to the hall, but that's kind of lost in the midst of time. I do remember I bought his record as a result of that, but I think he may have been a little bit too famous then for the dance at the hall.
And what about your mum has told me a little bit about some of the things that went on. She met Churchill. Did you meet Churchill as well as a little boy?
I didn't meet Churchill. There was an occasion where the Conservative Party were having a do at the hall, and I think on that occasion only Lady Churchill came, and being a very gracious lady, she came up into the kitchen to meet the people that were working, providing the tea, and I was there with a couple of my friends, and we each shook hands with her, which was very, very, very nice.
And you also told me that you met your wife in the ruins of the church, you've said.
Oh, well, yes. I mean, the church and the hall were so closely linked, being as at that time the trust chairman was the rector of the church. And at the time that the church burnt down, my wife and myself, or my wife and I, kind of bumped into each other in the ruins of the church as we were actually organising a fundraising event, and we often think of that as our meeting point, the first starting point.
And you got engaged, and where was your engagement party?
The engagement party was in the front hall. And yes, we had Diane's father ran a dance band, and he invited some of his colleagues along, and we had a real party.
Have you got any photographs?
I have. I might be able to find some of those.
That'd be really great. So you also knew about when it was turned into a court.
Yes, after our well, there were two things that we had to work on there. On returning from our evening out on a Saturday night, we had to get it ready for the church because the church services were held in the hall. And then after the church had finished using it, we then had to get ready for the court. And there were an awful lot of things that had to be got out. For example, there's a dais for the judge, and there was a set of like boxes and seats for the jury to sit in. There was a dock, which had all been made out of wood, and they all had to be got out and moved into place for the court the next day.
And do you remember the steel door going in?
I do remember the steel door at the back of the hall. I believe that the ladies' cloakroom was converted into a cell, and they seemed unhappy to bring them out of the front, or out of the side door of the ladies' cloakroom into the vestibule of the hall, and then into the main hall, and they wanted to have a shortcut from the cell directly into the hall. So that's where they used to bring the prisoners through.
Did you ever see any of the prisoners?
I think I must have done, because I remember being present while there was a court case going on.
Do you remember the court case at all?
No, that's too far in the distant memory.
No, I thought it might be. Just going back to your childhood a little bit, you mentioned Julie. So Julie was a friend, and you, her brother, and your cousin used to spend a lot of time in the holidays and at the weekends as well?
Definitely in the holidays, and I remember the holidays, they were about 8 weeks then, but they seemed like 1 week because we were enjoying them so much.
Did you get up to anything that you shouldn't have got up to that you've never told your mum?
Oh, no, I don't think I'd ever have done that. This was from the age of about 4 or 5 until 12.
And those are your best memories?
Indeed, indeed.
Have you been back to the church? Sorry, have you been back to the hall since you moved in the 1950s?
Yes, we did. We paid a visit. I think we were attending a church service, and we went back to the hall to have a look round. And somebody actually, I think it must have been Barbara, actually showed us around what they'd done to the hall.
Oh yeah, she did, didn't she?
That was a really good a good time to go and see, and also they were so happy for us to go back and see what they'd done.
You obviously your dad was there for 30 years. Very long time, 30 years.
Mm.
Do you remember some of the things your dad did over and above what we've talked about?
I can remember the time when he was concerned about the viability of the hall, and he did a lot of work in trying to bring new people in and new things. Yeah, I think he worked quite hard at that. There was a time, of course, at the point where we left Lindell and moved to Buckingham Road. That was a time where they were using the funds that were obtained from the sale of Lindell and the 2 tennis courts. And they actually spent that money on the hall in an attempt to upgrade it. And that's what gave us a new upper room, which is where the youth club took place.
Oh, okay.
And there were a number of other things they did to brighten up the place and to make it more amenable for renting.
Your mum mentioned that your dad actually painted one of the rooms bright red. Is that true?
Very true.
Yeah, I think it probably was. He did have a knack of doing the unconventional, and but I think at one stage they wanted to try and name the rooms differently, like have a green room and a red room, but I think maybe it was part of that plan, but the old names just stuck.
Okay. Do you know that they're going to be having a renaming of the rooms? Did I mention that to you?
No, I didn't know that.
Well, if there is anybody you feel that should be nominated, please do so, because the names are going to be the rooms are going to be renamed as part of the Heritage Project process.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yes.
Because, so your overall memories of the hall are really positive.
Absolutely. It was an idyllic childhood, I have to say.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.